Welcome to this week's midweek warm-up. We are again in the upstairs youth room for At Heart. Oh
yes,
my goodness.
for At Heart Churching.
For Outdoorsman Church. Anyhow, thanks for joining us.
Don't mind this.
We're still, ignore the Chick-fil-A chicken.
Can't see it.
Anyhow, we are...
Job chapter 25.
Yes. Which...
This is definitely the shortest chapter in the entire book.
Yes.
So Emily's happy.
Only because I'm very tired.
And we're leaving early in the morning.
Okay. Take it away.
Ernie's not here. She just went downstairs. Okay, so where we were beforehand, because no reason to talk about that until we know where we're at, is we had Job monologuing for quite a while, and he was going on and on about how he was concerned that he would not get a fair trial, basically, if he was taken to trial. And so he wants to talk to the judge, the actual judge.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to talk directly to God about this and find out what is wrong and if he actually did something wrong, because he knows he's innocent, but everyone else is telling him you're guilty. So he wants a fair chance to defend himself, but he knows that even if he is innocent in God's eyes, God can do whatever it feels like. And so he's wrestling with the fact that God has the right to do whatever he feels like to him, which he established earlier in saying, shall we accept only good and not evil from God?
It's bad.
It's evil in Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really putting that into practice at this point, because he's been sitting here for who knows how long. I highly doubt this is one day's conversation that we've had.
Yeah.
Probably his friends have been with him for weeks, maybe months at this point, telling him, you're a loser, you've been doing bad things, just admit you're wrong and take the punishment. And he's been saying, I'm innocent, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
And so now it is Bildad responding to him for his final time. And Bildad's at least as smart this time, and he's going to be Shuhite in his talk, and it's going to be short. It's only 6 verses, so it reads, Then Bildad the Shuhite answered and said, Dominion and fear belong to him. He makes peace in his high places. Is there any number to his armies? Upon whom does his light not rise? How then can man be righteous before God? Or how can he be pure who is born of a woman? If even the moon does not shine, and the stars are not pure in his sight, how much less man who is a maggot, and a son of man who is a worm? Story doesn't apply to you. No,
Ew.
I thought it was a good joke.
No.
So let's look in depth at verse 1. Then Bildad the Shuhite answered and said,
He spoke. There you go. Moving on.
Yeah, it's a very complex verse. I like to see someone preach a sermon on that verse.
I mean, just because you're preaching a sermon on one verse doesn't mean you can't expand upon other things that tie into
Oh
that.
no, it can only be this verse, that's it. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 words. Only those ones. The only scripture they can give us.
Okay.
That'd be amazing.
No.
Amazing boring.
Alright.
Okay, so I immediately go to Star Trek here because it says Dominion, but there are no Jem'Hadar shapeshifters involved here. And so obviously he is talking about God here, and he says dominion and fear belong to him. He makes peace in his high places. So obviously God is, in Bildad's answer here, God's in control. He has the right to do anything and everything he feels like. There's no question there. And at the same time, he also says fear, and so yes.
I'm just reading the cross-reference.
Okay, that's fine. Would you like to read about the cross-reference?
No, maybe.
Okay,
Continue.
we're not going to. Okay, so fear in the Old Testament is not fear normally as we consider it now. Normally we consider fear to be we're scared of something, we don't like it, we're going to run away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so fear here is talking about reverential respect, trust, and of course fear and tied into it.
A healthy
Respect.
acknowledgement of that bear is going to eat me. And I can't do much about it.
Well, we don't have a bear right here. We have God.
Yes, but it's the concept of realizing how
insignificant we are.
Yeah, insignificant compared to
Even compared to a bear, we're small.
Yeah.
And a bear could eat us if it wanted to. I prefer not to wrestle a bear.
I would also prefer not to wrestle a bear.
I mean, if it's a tame bear, I don't think it'd be entertaining. But a bear paw is still as big as my head.
Yeah.
A large bear paw is a lot bigger than my head. So I wouldn't want to wrestle a bear, much less God who created the bears and everything else.
Yeah.
And so he's really saying here that God's in control. God can do whatever he feels like, wherever he feels like, whenever he feels like. And so that's actually a really strong statement that Bildad is making as far as what God is doing. In verse 3, he says, "Is there any number to his armies?" And so, what are God's armies?
It's thousands upon thousands. The angels.
Okay. Can we hurt an angel? We don't stand a chance against an angel. Much less the fact that there are millions of angels. So what could Job do against an army of angels? Nothing. God felt like squashing it with angels. They'd do that. Not a problem. I mean, he sent one angel and he killed all the firstborn in Egypt in one night.
Yeah.
That's not a small number either, because it's firstborn of everything. Firstborn person. And that's from each generation. So, father, son, grandson, grandfather. All that fun stuff. Not to mention all the cows, the camels, the cats, the horses. Everything.
It's just a lot of death. The whole Passover, which is actually coming up soon.
Yes, it is.
It just is sad because there is a lot of death, but it's sad and yet
it's sad that it was
happy.
necessary.
Yeah, it's sad that it was necessary, but it's happy because it points to Christ, to the fact that God has redeemed us. And
well, it pointed to something even more sad that was even more necessary.
Yeah.
And so it's just sad that it was necessary.
Yeah.
But that's humanity. That's the way it goes. And so obviously we have a massive number of angels here. We can't fight against them. Why would we even want to try? And it says, "Upon whom does his light not rise?" So is there anyone in existence that can hide from God?
No. And many people try. Many people have tried. I think sometimes we even try without realizing that's what we're doing, because we're kind of like, oh, well, no, you know, we kind of convince ourselves that this would work until we realize that, seriously, no matter what I do, no matter where I go, God sees me and sees what I'm doing. There's the whole bit about Jonah, who
That's what I was going to.
tried to ignore what God said because he didn't like it and didn't think that those people deserved God's mercy or a message from God. So he made the decision in his own wisdom to try and go the opposite direction. And it does not end well for Jonah.
Well, it says in Jonah verse 2 and 3 for chapter 1, God says, "Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." And so Jonah answers, saying, "But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with him to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord." He didn't make it very far away from the presence of the Lord. Because, verse 4 starts with, "But the Lord sent out a great wind on the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship was about to be broken up." So he tried to run away to the furthest place away that they could ever find. And God said, "Nope. I still see you." And obviously we know that's not nearly as far away as you could actually get now, but they didn't know. But there's nowhere on the planet that we can possibly go to escape from God.
No.
And I can't remember which one of the astronauts it was, but one astronaut said upon seeing the Earth from space that it's clear that God exists because only God could create something that big. And that's in space. And you didn't escape from God there, so where can we go that we can escape from God?
There's nowhere. And I can't remember where it's at, but if you've watched The Chosen at all, the first season, If I make my place in the heavens, you are there. If I make my place in the depths, then you are there.
Sheol.
It's the concept of no matter where I go, God is there. And that doesn't mean that.
That's the Psalms.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
The Psalm of David. Yeah, the point that David is making is that anything he could do, no matter how bad it was, God would still be there. Mm-hmm. And he could never get away from it. And so Bildad's really saying here, you have no chance. You cannot escape from God no matter what. So why would anyone even try? In verse 4 he goes on with, how then can man be righteous before God? And so the answer to that, ironically enough, is exactly what Job has been searching for this entire time. He's been claiming that he wants to talk to the judge. And part of talking to the judge is you get to talk to your defense attorney. And the defense attorney, if you ever listen to Carmen, is the one and only Son of God.
And he's never lost a case.
And he's revealed in time and space. And he's never lost a case.
Yeah.
And so Job is here looking forward thousands of years in the future saying, I need the Redeemer. I need the Redeemer to come and redeem me. Because even though I'm a really, really good guy, I'm not good enough. And here's Bildad saying, you're not going to be good enough. I'm not even good enough. How can anyone be good enough to be before God and stand there righteously? And it says, or how can he be pure who is born of a woman? So it brings up a question that I've always had: did Adam and Eve have belly buttons?
It's possible.
I don't know. They talk about it in Adam XY TV show where he's born in a test tube.
Yeah.
Doesn't have an umbilical cord, so he didn't have a belly button. So did Adam and Eve have belly buttons? They weren't born. Does this verse not apply to them?
I don't know. That's weird.
I don't know. I know they're dead.
That's random.
It's not random.
Yeah.
It says, how can they be pure? They're not pure. They're dead because they sinned. Once again, the answer here is clearly only Jesus can be. Because everyone else, like it says in Romans, has sinned. And they've all fallen short of the glory of God. Going back to Job, though. Verse 5 says, if even the moon does not shine and the stars are not pure in his sight. And we'll stop there for a moment. Because do the stars not shine? Or does the moon not shine? Obviously, technically, no, it doesn't. But
well, there's obviously the cycles of the moon, the different phases. I couldn't think of the word. There is a new moon where there's not visible, or at least not much visible light coming off of the moon.
Yeah, but we know now that's reflecting it. Obviously, it says in Genesis chapter 1 that it was made to be the lesser light of the night. And God knew it was reflecting, but we didn't know. But it looks to us like it's shining. But he's saying here, even if you don't see the moon, and the stars are not pure, which, I don't know if stars are pure. They're stars. They're way out there. I can't see them. Well, I can see reflections of them from however many years past when light finally gets to us.
I wonder if that's talking about the color of the light?
I don't know. You should ask Bildad and find out.
Anyway.
I don't know. Could be.
And the stars are not pure in his sight.
Because obviously stars do change color and go red to blue and then explode. But by the time we see them, it was a long time past. I mean, if our sun blew up, we wouldn't know for 8 minutes.
That's messed up.
It could have blown up 8 minutes ago. We could be dead already and don't know it.
Wow.
If you watch the video, you know it didn't happen.
Oh my goodness, that's... Yeah.
Okay, so verse 6. How much less man who is a maggot? So he's here taking a very, very high, lofty view of mankind and saying that pretty much the exact same thing as what's said later on in Isaiah, and that our righteousness is a filthy rag. Everything that we have means nothing. we're just a vapor that's going to be here for a moment, like James says, and we're gone. And so, yeah, we live, what, 70, 80, maybe longer years. Maybe you're really old and you live to 94, like some people do. Or 91, like William Shatner. And he would be the groundbreaking statement that he's going to die soon. Obviously, he's 91. Probably should miss that in the news. That was awesome.
I saw something about him in the news, but yeah.
Yeah, but let's say we live even 100 years and make a nice even number. 100 years and say even the world's, let's go with a short term, say 6,000 years old. So 100 out of 6,000, that's like 0.15% of the time the planet's been in existence. That's not very much. So, do we really live very long?
No.
No. Our life really is a drop in the bucket. And there's nothing that we can do that will make it longer. I mean, we can obviously have medical stuff that makes us live longer, blah, blah, blah. But we're still nothing compared to the length of time that God's going to be here. Because God will always be in existence, because he's always been in existence. As he is the only self-existent, it's not fair to say thing, because he's not a thing, but
person, being.
Only self-existent, being in existence. So, we're really small and insignificant. Which is not to say we're not important. Just we're insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Comparative.
Even a really important person, like, let's say Napoleon, he didn't really get anything done, even though it was 200 years ago, and you remember him. But he didn't really do anything that affected things for a long time. The only one that really did was Jesus. And he's the only one that has an effect still today and will every other day. But going back to Bildad here, he's saying man is a maggot. And I'm pretty sure he means humanity here, not just men. Although some women would say men are maggots. That's not very fair. But he's saying the man has no great redeeming value. Which we don't, to be honest. Mankind as a whole just destroys things. I mean, we can do great things and make lots of pretty things, but overall we just destroy things.
Well, we tend to be very selfish and short-sighted and please me now and careless and reckless. It's kind of part of how we function.
And shorten longevity.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to live very long, so why should our stuff live very long? I mean, even castles that looked really impressive, they're falling down. There's lots of castles in ruins. The really big, great architectures are almost all in ruins at this point. And the Great Pyramids they're really great, but they're nothing compared to what they were. So they're just a pile of rocks now. And obviously, Hanging Gardens of Babylon, they've been gone for centuries. The great statue in Greece, I can't remember which one it is, the Rhodes, it's been gone for over 2,000 years. Library of Alexandria, been gone for 1,800 years. Things just don't last a long time. Yet somehow this book's still here. Thousands of years later. Strange how that works.
Heaven and earth will pass away, but the
Not
word
a
of
jot or
God
tittle.
will by no means pass away.
Yeah. Let's finish the verse here. And a son of man who is a worm. So, basically, man's worthless. The kids are worthless. So how can we have a right to stand against God? And so obviously here he's saying, Job, you are a great dude, but you're still worthless compared to God. So how dare you question God? Which I can understand where he's coming from here, because we don't have a right to question God when God says something, because God's the one that made everything. And so if there's a question of, is God's word unfair about something, or are we wrong? The answer is obviously we're wrong.
We're wrong.
That, or we misunderstand what it's saying.
Yeah.
Which there are times when we do that.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You can say it's not fair that people go to hell. Well, God's the judge. And God says righteousness is purity, which means perfection. So if you're not perfect, you don't get to go to heaven. But if you accept Jesus, then you get to, because Jesus was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But people argue that's not fair. Well, that's nice. They don't get to earn their way out of heaven or out of hell when they die. They still go to hell. Because you can't argue with God on that. God's in control.
It's not fair that Jesus had to come and die and take our place. It's not fair that we get to live the life that we do and have God's grace and mercy. It's not fair that we're forgiven, but it is God's character in his heart to love us and forgive us and provide for us and renew us and restore us and do all of that. Not because it's fair to us, but because he loves us and wants us to be with him.
But it is fair that we go to hell, because that's what we deserve.
Exactly.
And that's not to be mean, but it is blunt. And there's nothing wrong with being blunt.
Us and our children and everyone we've ever met. It's everyone.
Everyone who has sinned.
In Romans, it says, "For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God."
Except for God.
Except for Jesus.
And so the long story made short here is Bildad really laying out the problem of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying that human sin, we cannot stand up to God. We don't deserve to. God's going to do what he wants to because he's God. And so he's missing the fact that God was going to provide the way to fix things that Job was looking forward to and hoping for, but hadn't occurred yet. And so he's really kind of jumping the gun here.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's jumping to the conclusion that isn't necessarily there yet, because Job is right. He doesn't know he's right. And God does put him in his place for what he does say later, but the fact of the matter is that Job was righteous, and God had the right to let him be tested. Mm-hmm. And God has the right to let us be tested for things. It's not because we deserve a punishment, undeservedly, because we do deserve punishment.
Yeah.
It's because God allows us to do things and have things happen to us, because that's the effect of sin.
Yes. And he uses that to develop a closer relationship with us, to show us our need for him and dependence upon him, and to develop in us Christ-like reactions and responses and behaviors.
Well, and sometimes it's not just to develop it in us, but sometimes it's necessary to draw other people to him.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people are just so stubborn that they will not relinquish control of their life. Not that they actually have any control, but they think they do. And they're not willing to relinquish it until something major happens to someone that they know, and they see that person's response.
It's a turning point.
It's no different than us seeing something like you see a commercial for Coke, and you really like the commercial, so you go buy a Coke. I don't know anyone that's ever had that happen to them before. But that's the point of their advertising, to make you do that. It doesn't work for me. But it's the same thing, effectively, is that God's advertising what the Christian life is through his children. Mm-hmm. And we're the example to everyone else who is not a Christian. And obviously Job could not be a Christian because Christ hadn't come yet, but he's the closest thing in the Old Testament. And Job is here advertising what it's supposed to be like to live a righteous life. And his friends almost get it, but they don't quite get it. And we're also to the point where they're all going to get rebuked. And that'll be the fun part. So anything else before we close for today? Because we now made
God is good.
Almost our long video.
Mm-hmm.
The short chapter took a long time.
Yeah.
That went off track a lot.
Not just me.
Mostly. Okay, let's go ahead and pray then. Dear Lord in heaven, we thank you for this day, and thank you for the great example we have in Job. We thank you for his three friends that are kind of stupid and represent so much of humanity and just our own blindness to what's actually going on frequently. We thank you for the gift of your son coming and dying on the cross, even though he lived a perfect life, so that we could be given the gift of redemption and the eternal life that only you can provide. Thank you that you are a great and mighty God, and that you saw fit to
created all of us in this world, and just thank you so much for you being you. Please give us wisdom and guidance to go forward through this day, and we're open to free. Amen.
All right. Thanks for joining us this week. We look forward to chatting some more. Job is going to have some things to say to Bildad next week, and we look forward to sharing that. Is he still talking?
And the week after.
Three?
Four.
4 chapters in a row. He had a lot to say.
Well, then he goes on
to
5th chapter, and then the 6th chapter. That's a really long chapter. Yeah, this.
It's a lot.
The next 6 chapters will be Job talking, and then his real friend shows up and tells him they're all stupid. So, then time around April.
Yeah. Anyhow, again, thanks for joining us. Let us know your thoughts and comments in the comments section. And if you would like to support this ministry at Heart Ministries, check out our website, which will be linked below. Also, one of the biggest things you can do, let me rephrase that, the biggest thing you can do that we ask of you is to pray for God's will and His direction and His provision for all the work that He has for us, and for you, for that matter. And then just provision for the ministry, safety while we work, all of that. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
And subscribe.